This is almost a euphemism for Athens. Northwest of my hostel, on the route I'm taking to Academia Square, is a little park square, if you will. This place looks kind of pretty, but it could be nicer, but it serves its function better than nothing. The more northern portion of it seems to be somewhat of a duplication of it, but maybe these administrative buildings or a school or something is what it serves. Here as I walk along, a couple of older buildings that are in a state of near collapse. Don't know if they're occupied or not, but at least they haven't fallen down and could be restored at some time. There's another one over there. The mere fact that they're still alive and standing gives some kind of hope for the future restoration. Sad how the world is becoming so cement ugly. So in the lower right hand corner you can see where my hostel is. It's in number 21, I think it is. And I've walked northwest, jogging a little bit continually to the west, en route to this one here, Platono Square, which I think is Academia Square. The street I followed up most recently was called Platonus, which gives me a pretty good hint that this is where I've come to. And there's first of all this large church hill here. Don't know what it is yet, but my guess is the park's not too far away. Again, nothing astounding about the aesthetics of these churches, but here's what the front entryway looks like. And since we can't go in with a camera, that's not cool. I can stay outside and go in. I'm guessing this is an old restored Citrian. Just a guess. Isn't that the cutest little bugger in the world? Called Dolly. I wonder if that's in reference to Dolly from American folklore. I can't read this, of course, but I think Kevin said that Plato used to hang out in this square. It's an impressively large church. And the man who runs and probably owns this little convenience store that I bought my soda water from says, gotta keep walking to get to the square I'm after up the street. So here we go. The old man in the shop was correct. I continued walking because I saw a whole pile of trees in one block, and that was that park over there. And to the right, you can't see it, is a restaurant with all kinds of Platonian looking faces with beards and so forth. And as I walked about here, I found this archaeological park of Plato's Academy. So here we are. Well, using this map, I had walked down this street from my hostel quite a distance, and this is where that cafe is that has all the Platonian looking bearded folks as a motif on the outside. And then I've walked down here, and I'm now standing there, of course, and this is the archaeological park of Plato's Academy. Right here, we're going to walk up here to look at these buildings. This one, the first one here, is the Geometrics Sacred House, it's called, 700 BC, mostly unbaked bricks. And then A3, this one here, correction, A2, is dating to the prehistoric period, perhaps 2500 BC. Can you believe it? And then A3 is a low wall with buttresses, and that's part of 3 ancient Athens gymnasiums built here with a sacred olive grove defined by an enclosure wall, and that's part of this wall. Apparently there are other places around here that will see part of that wall. So it's 450 by 300 meters in dimension. Down here in this section in B1 is part of the gymnasium. This is the first century BC through the 1st AD. Large rectangular courtyard of phalastra. Maybe it's this part here, is a cistern that was used by athletes to bathe themselves. Apparently B2 is a Roman era construction. All the rest, all the stuff here and all that stuff up there is all modern development that exists today. Interesting summary here, Plato 428-348 BC, an Athenian aristocrat, and a Macedonian philosopher, Aristotle, formulated two different, though complementary, systems for looking at the world and man, which since have formed the two poles around which man's intellectual pursuits have largely revolved. Raising my camera up, holding it over my head, this may be as close as we're going to get to see those A1 through 3 ruins. It is interesting that stuff exists from 2500 BC, 4,500 years ago. So here we have another view. I can't identify which is which. I assume that wall over there is a architect's wall, but I could be wrong. Can't tell for sure. Notice right down in front of us is something that's been excavated. Maybe that's that 750 BC one. And I'm telephoto lensing over to that wall, and I think that's a recent construction. Probably just to buttress those walls that have been excavated out from collapsing back down in. There's always something, I don't know how quite to describe it, intellectually quaint about having the line, the literal physical line that I trace across the earth. Cross, I know, the physical lines that great people in the past have crossed. To think that Plato walked here and that somehow our lines cross, even though distant in time. Sounds silly, but that's kind of how I picture it in my mind. Down there it looks like some kinds of structure remains, the walls of. About it all that the time machine concept does in its various creative forms in literature and movies is bring closer together the gap between Plato's line across the earth and mine. So we are right here. The cistern is ahead of us. We'll see these walls or the remains. I think the cistern is covered in the first building and this portion perhaps in the second covered area. So these walls to our right and left constituted the gymnasia, probably about the size of one of our health spas today, some of them, smaller ones. And the cistern ahead. And then other buildings beyond, or portions of this building. But it's interesting to note that the outline over there is greater than this square that we see here. So maybe we're looking at this part right here now, and down there further, or that part there. Be that represents the true outline of the building, and this was just that inner portion, although here you can see an inner wall. This is the cistern. Notice the smooth plastered side there. See, if you take what we saw in that picture, that should be the outer dimension there, all the way around. And these were those two rooms down to one end, so it dramatically enlarges it. This is probably much larger than our average health spa. Perhaps this portion off to the right. I don't know what that was, but some substantial stone. And then that walled building down there. Someday, have a technology that allows us to dissect the vibrations created by the original speech of Plato and others at this time? Will all of a sudden the virtual reality we thought we had to plan be already in place? We just needed to decipher it. Some kind of supporting post. Notice where I'm standing now seems to be a higher elevation than that room over there. Don't know if that's true, don't know its significance. This was a pretty substantial facility. And it's one of 3 apparently. I had to find different strategies to mentally project the past onto this ruin. And one of my strategies I try to think about is that just take a normal health spa or gymnasium like we'd have today, which I think is kind of a cross between a health club and a true what we call a gymnasium. And just imagine the people doing today whatever they're doing the same thing back in this time. Sometimes the implements might be different, weight machines of today, but they would have had, I would guess, their equivalent. Some of the sports they played might have been the same, wrestling, that sort of thing. Some shop in there may have sold drinks or whatever, healthy things. Again, notice the height difference, all of the rubble that accumulates in the course of 2 to 2,500 years. Then was this, and notice how this big rock was used as the pedestal, no doubt, for a column. Here's some more structures, perhaps, maybe part of that wall, I don't know. Here's an unrestored version of what we saw, and it's a convertible. Here's a little surprise. My father had a pink, I think it was a 58 Buick convertible. As you can see, we're next to the gasworks. I've come out there in my little walkabout. And down there, there's a pretty building. See just the top of it there. It's the Demo Aesthetics, or Dermo Aesthetics. And I think what it means is Skin Beauty Laboratory. Very nice building. Here another very lovely building, don't know what it is, but new and modern, relatively a novel concept, at least what I've seen in Athens, and with interesting design instead of that horribly ugly communist cement slab design. I'm guessing that this is some kind of venue for the arts, but it's a pretty big, impressive building.